were called Grade Slam. That's how we launched. So we launched in 2013. In early 2014. Started working on it in 2013, and the company was called Grade Slam, and it was a concoction of the mind of my mind and my co-founder's mind, and we both played sports. We both loved and were in education, and it's like, well, grade and slam, and it came all together. And then we operated as Great Slam for the first 6 years, and then realized it's a terrible name because we're not a grade book. We're not involved with grades.
Welcome to Designing Successful Startups, where we dive deep into the journeys of extraordinary founders. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce Roberto Cipriani, the visionary founder of Paper, an educational technology company that's democratizing access to tutoring across North America. From his roots as a software developer with a dream of helping students to raising nearly $400 million and serving over 3 million students, Roberto's journey is a masterclass in finding product market fit, scaling with purpose, and staying true to your mission. We'll explore how he transformed a simple idea into a company that's changing education, why he believes investing in yourself as a leader is crucial for scaling, and how competitive drive and a desire to give back fuel his entrepreneurial grit. Whether you're building your first startup or scaling your next venture, Roberto's insights on navigating the challenges of rapid growth while maintaining your core values will inspire and guide you. Let's dive in. And hello, Roberto.
Hello, I'm excited to be here.
Glad you're here. You win the best background. People who are seeing the video are going to just, be like, and if you move your head, then they can see that it's Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. That's pretty amazing.
It's a piece called Exchange of Ideas by an Italian artist. And I think that's, as an entrepreneur, you're exchanging ideas with the public. So it's an important piece to me. That's why I like to have it in the background. And it's also very eclectic. And I say, this is what's inside my brain, just a bunch of random stuff.
Well, good. I'm glad at least your brain is doing stuff three-dimensionally.
Exactly.
Roberto, start us off with just telling us, where are you originally from and where do you live now?
So originally from Montreal, currently still in Montreal, although, I come from an Italian immigrant family. So, Italian was my first language growing up till I went to school, and then learned English and also French here in Quebec, in Canada.
Okay, so here you are, you basically grew up in Montreal. Somewhere along the way, you got pushed into the entrepreneurial trap. And because once you're in it, you can never get out. But so tell us your story about becoming an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. And I agree, it is a trap. It's very, very hard I don't think you want to break out. So I think it's a good type of trap.
One person told me that it's because once we're an entrepreneur, we're not employable by anybody.
That's exactly it. I love that. It's a very wise words. So, a little bit about me, how I ended up in the entrepreneurial world. Like I said, grew up in an Italian immigrant family. So school was always a big focus for me. My parents taught me that education is the greatest equalizer. I had a lot of, I felt it was important for me to do well in school and really take away, not just academically, like from a performance perspective, but just take a lot away from school. So I actually ended up going to grad school here in Montreal at McGill University, studying computational neuroscience. I had this dream of becoming an academic. The best part of my day was building the software to run the experiments that I was running. Then I would keep running the experiment, and then I would love writing the code to then analyze these humongous data sets. So I really discovered this passion for computer science, programming, coding, whatever you want to call it. And I actually decided to drop out of grad school and instead pursue this entrepreneurial journey now that I had started developing what at that time was a very marketable skill. So I wanted to develop software for a living. Even within academia, it's somewhat entrepreneurial, right? You need to apply for your own grants and your own funding. You do have someone that oversees the work that you're doing, but it's, in my mind, that's sort of like a board. They help govern, but you're sort of making the decisions day to day. And when I dropped out of the PhD program, I said, you know what, I'm going to do this software thing on my own. And I don't know, it just, for me, autonomy was always a really important thing. So was a software developer for a few years before I started the company, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about, called Paper.
Yeah, we will.
My undergrad was in physiology, and then did this computational neuroscience. So I, as a hacker, I even hacked my way into learning about computer science and how to program. So I feel that I was lucky, especially to learn in the model of grad school, which again is you're very autonomous. You're an independent thinker. You do it on your own time. I didn't have a class to teach me this is how you need to develop the software. It's like you need to build this thing in order to run the experiment to figure it out. So I'm actually really grateful that I got to learn in that environment.
With the life of Roberto, those many years ago, who was trying to build the software to run these experiments, if that Roberto was doing that now, wouldn't his life be a lot easier because you would just turn and tell your favorite AI, write a program that does this?
I believe so. And you know what? I said the word grateful. I'm also grateful that I learned it at the time I did, because it was an incredibly marketable skill back then, right? I'm talking about in 2008, 2007. And I would say it's really not the same anymore. So I get a lot of questions about, what advice would you give me if I'm thinking about going to computer science and, trying to develop an app or a website or web apps, which is what I was doing at the time. It's really not the game anymore. And I tell them, obviously, which is going to be very easy to understand, is go into AI and learn about AI. And also on the data side, I think there's a lot of marketable skills to learn on data.
Well, let's get into Paper, because that is a big thing that's taken a lot of years, but it's a very interesting company, and it seems to be doing very well. So, and you got a great name.
So a little bit on that, actually. So we were originally not called Paper. We were called Grade Slam. That's how we launched. So we launched in 2013. In early 2014. Started working on it in 2013. And the company was called Grade Slam. And it was a concoction of my mind and my co-founder's mind. And we both played sports. We both loved and were in education. And it's like, well, grade and slam, and it came all together. And then we operated as Grade Slam for the first 6 years, and then realized it's a terrible name because we're not a grade book. We're not involved with grades. And people would frequently call us a Grand Slam. So we actually decided to rebrand in 2020, right before COVID started, which happened to be fantastic timing for us. And we rebranded to Paper. And it was, at the time, my co-founder was the one that came up with the name. At the time, we're like, how is there no company called Paper? This is like, we thought it was like the best possible name. And, it grew on us in that moment. And, it definitely grew with us and the company.
And I'm also amazed that you could get paper.co as the URL, because, I mean, did you have to buy it from anybody, or did you really just go to a domain supplier and there it was, you could have it?
It was, so Paper, no, we did have to buy it through an agent. It wasn't what I would think at the time that expensive. I don't remember the exact price, but it was in the low thousands of dollars for, domain real estate, which has value. It's an asset. So yeah, it was available. The company name was available. Paper.com, funny story, was not available. And it's so silly because Paper.com just redirects to Staples Paper, like, product page. So it's not even like, I don't even know if they care about it. We tried to buy it from them, but they said that it's not even a price thing. It's not like we would almost give it to you for free, but we don't want to sell it. So we went with paper.co, which we felt was as good as we're going to get.
Well, tell us what got you to form it in the first place.
Of course. So, if we pick up where I left off on my story, I was a software developer for 5-6 years. And then in 2013, my co-founder and I teamed up with this idea to democratize education. We felt if we can provide students with tutoring in an affordable and accessible way using technology, um, we felt that the market, the majority of the market, the 80 or 90% of the market was being completely underserved by other tutoring companies. Tutoring has always been a very expensive endeavor, paying $50, $60 an hour to have someone come to your house and help your kids with math or science. And there was a lot of companies doing that in person and starting to do it online in 2013. But again, it was very much focused on the top 10% of wealthy families. So we thought if we can use technology and take that business model, but serve the 80 to 90% of families that couldn't afford tutoring on a regular basis, not only is that an amazing opportunity to build a big business, but we could really make an impact on the education and the academic journey of millions and millions of students. So we kicked off on this journey. We didn't really know exactly what we wanted to build, but we know we wanted to be able to recreate that feeling that a student gets when they're unblocked. And a lot of the time, that's a tutor that does that. So my co-founder had the education background. He was a former teacher. I had a tech background, and we felt we had the right set of experience to really make a difference in the industry. And we kicked off Paper. And I could dive into what happened after we started the company, but I'll just take a break to see if you have any questions on that.
What I'm interested in understanding, because you were not an experienced startup founder, this was your first go.
Yep.
Sort of one of the reasons that I wrote this book and I'm doing these podcasts is to start providing more resources for startup founders like you were in 2013. Did you make mistakes? Obviously none of them were fatal because it's still going great, but how hard was it at the beginning to know what to do?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. Obviously, there's a million mistakes. Just like every founder. I mean, if a founder said they didn't make any mistakes, I would definitely not believe it. But in terms of knowing what to do, I think that's a really, really good way of framing it. I think that the philosophy that we had is deeply understanding the problem of the customer and then figuring out what the solution is instead of having a solution and then figuring out which problem you're trying to solve. For us, that meant we knew we wanted to provide tutoring to students. We didn't even know who our customer was. Is the customer the student? Is their customer the parent? Is their customer the school? Is their customer whoever, a teacher, right? But we knew that we wanted to solve a problem, which was that a majority of students weren't getting access to the extra help that they needed, but then a small portion of the students did. And because our mission from day one was this idea of democratizing education, we were just very mission oriented in solving this problem. But it took us so from 2014 when we launched till about 2018 when we've had our first real customer, it took us 4 years to find any type of product market fit. Because first we're like, hey, let's solve this problem for students. Let's sell it directly to the student or the parent. We did that for a year. We can make it more affordable. We built a bunch of technology at the time using WebRTC, HTML5 in the browser, video conferencing, which nowadays is just standard. At the time was, sort of new. And we realized we're able to make it slightly more affordable, but still not affordable enough. At the same time, we recognized students hated being on camera and just wanted to get help on their simple math questions they had at the end of the day. So we started to learn a lot more. Well, the student doesn't want to have video. The parents can't really afford it. Well, how are we going to continue to solve this problem, which is getting the help to the students? And ultimately landed on the only way we can get this to be affordable and accessible is to sell it directly to public schools. Public schools pay for access to the tutors. We train the tutors, and then we help the students at the public school. So there's no cost to the students. But we build the technology to sit on the infrastructure of the public schools. We make it easy for the public school to work with paper. They pay for it. Students get it for free, and now they have unlimited help whenever they need. So really, it's about the understanding what the problem is and spending the time to deeply understand that problem.
Okay, so that leads to me to two real related questions to what you just described. So I don't forget them, I'm going to say them both, and then
And get
so one is the infrastructure at all the schools similar enough that you don't have to like redo this a bunch of different times? And the other question is, I cannot imagine that a school has a lot of extra money in their budget. So you must have figured out a way for some money that they were already spending to be redirected to you. So those are the two questions.
I'll touch on the first one first, just because it's a super easy answer. Yes, infrastructure, the technological infrastructure was similar enough. There was enough interoperability that it was very easy for us to plug into the student information systems and learning management systems at most public schools. That's the answer to that. Your second question was a really good question. The perception that schools or public schools don't have money is, in my mind, is not the right way of framing it. We're talking about the bigger districts have $1 billion budgets. So say that they don't have money, it's crazy, right? I'm not saying you said that, but generally that's the perception. What you're actually doing, and you've definitely been an entrepreneur before because you alluded to it, is you're just competing for dollars that already exist. And instead it becomes a conversation about prioritizing paper in their budget over other items and not whether do they have enough money to pay for paper. And it's just that simple reframing, I find for us had a big impact. We weren't trying to say, do you have money to pay for paper? It's how is paper going to make your district run more effectively and efficiently? And I need to prove that to you. So for us, it was about, so that we were in some cases, we were replacing more traditional models of tutoring, which might have been a few college students coming to public school, that high school for 6 hours, 3 hours on a Tuesday, 3 hours on a Thursday. And we would come in and be, not necessarily priced similarly. We were a pretty high ticket item, but we're like, well, you're going to invest a little more, but you're getting 24/7 unlimited access to tutors and tutoring for your students. Plus, we're going to train your teachers and we're going to build on our infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. And all of these districts had this problem where there's this huge disparity, again, between some students that would go home and mommy and daddy would pay for tutoring for them, private tutoring. And then they felt that they were failing the other students that couldn't afford that. So we were solving a huge problem for that district. And they saw the value in investing a little more and getting an infinite amount more value from that dollar that they're spending. So it became a question about budget prioritization. And just like you alluded to, it's not about whether they do or don't have money.
The market for this is going to be, somewhat limited in Canada just because of the size of Canada. So have you found that your biggest market is in your southern neighbor?
Absolutely. I mean, it's very common for Canadian technology companies to quickly look south just because the market is more than 10 times bigger. I would say there's one in education, which is generally in Canada, in the US, and most of Western world, a very pretty risk averse industry. It's always slightly less risk averse in the US. So we thought the combination of the market being much bigger, plus a little bit less aversion to risk, we thought we could have really had an impact, and we did. So it's not like we avoided Canada. We've tried selling everywhere in Canada and the US at the same time, which probably wasn't one of the mistakes that we made. We weren't focused enough, but we quickly started to get the momentum in Southern California, which in Irvine County and Laguna Beach County, which were more affluent counties, which from that mission perspective, we didn't feel like this was the best fit, but it really kickstarted us to understand how to sell to districts how do you run customer success? How do you deploy and make paper a success in a public school district? And then from there, we quickly exploded elsewhere in California. And then we started to get to other big markets like Florida, Nevada, Texas, New York, and sort of went very coastal just because those are where the bigger populations are. So, US was a very big market for us and still is 99% of our market today.
Hi, the podcast you are listening to is a companion to my recent book, Tech Startup Toolkit: How to Launch Strong and Exit Big. This is the book I wish I'd had, as I was founding and running 8 startups over 35 years. I tell the unvarnished truth about what went right and especially about what went wrong. You could get it from all the usual booksellers. I hope you like it. It's a true labor of love. Now back to the show. I imagine that you're, for a lot of reasons, you're going to focus on very large school districts. They have a bigger budget. It means that you're having to worry about a smaller number of variations in the infrastructure. But to truly democratize, you really have to get to even some of the smaller, poorer school districts. Is your model set up such that you can really see yourselves servicing those smaller school districts over time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our wheelhouse at the beginning wasn't the biggest districts. You're not going to go into, Los Angeles Unified School District and say, hey, do you want to buy paper? You can't even get a meeting with any of the assistant superintendents, forget about the superintendent. So our wheelhouse was in this range of districts, which had about 1,000 to 50,000 students. And it was about 75% of the market of the public school districts in the US are in this range. So it was what we thought was like the middle layer. Then there was a bunch of much smaller districts and then a few much larger districts. So, but for us, our wheelhouse at the start was this middle range where we felt we can not only make the biggest impact, but also fund and make enough money to fund the business. And that was our philosophy for the first few years once we were in market. So again, 2018, we finally started to land these district customers. 2019, we started to grow pretty quickly. And then 2020 hits and the pandemic begins, and now everybody needed access to remote products and remote services in education because students were at home. So up until then, that middle layer was where that mid-market is where we spent most of our time. But then obviously as the pandemic comes in now, we had the big districts coming to knock on our door and say, hey, I know you're working with the neighboring community and the neighboring school district. Can you help us? So then it started, it sort of pulled us in a direction of, instead of us saying, hey, we're going to go after the big whale, primarily because it's hard to sell to the big whales, and especially when it's public money, a public school district, very long sales cycles.
I'm assuming this is a relationship selling kind of situation where somebody's got to call them. They're not going to pick you out of a catalog or anything like that. So how can you scale? How have you managed to scale? Because you have scaled quite a bit. And in fact, you've raised a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right? Haven't you raised like 400 million?
Yeah, we've raised close to 400 million. We did. So once the pandemic hit, we sort of, I guess, I know word blew up. We, in the best way possible, not in a bad way. And we went from just an idea. We went from about 50,000 students on the platform at the beginning of the pandemic, and within 2 years, we were above 3 million students, and grew to thousands of employees, raised a ton of money. And obviously, how do you scale? It depends on what you're asking, which part of the business had to scale. All of it had to scale, to be honest. And there is a lot of challenges along the way. And then, there's challenges in every business, and post-pandemic, there were challenges. But I think during that really rapid scaling phase, for those entrepreneurs that are listening to this, that are about to go through this or going through this, it's a bit hypothetical what I'm going to say, but the biggest challenge was knowing when to go fast versus when to go slow. So in these high growth, high scale, fast moving environments, you feel like you're making a million decisions a day. And that's normal. Every entrepreneur does that. But there's going to be 3 or 4 of those decisions that you're going to make that are going to fundamentally change the course of the business. And maybe not every day, but it happens often enough. And what's important is for you to recognize which of those decisions need time, because the return on investment on that decision is going to be 10x multiple. So it's knowing what decisions are the important ones and really giving yourself the time, which again, in a high scale environment is just feels almost impossible. And I would say that, I have tons of examples of mistakes that I've made in that with that respect. But there were times when I knew we need to slow down here. This might take us a couple of weeks to come to a decision, but it's important that we take the time. And it's really hard to do in a venture-backed, high-growth environment.
Okay, so that was one message to entrepreneurs. Do you have any other messages that you feel like you just have to get out to entrepreneurs listening?
Yeah, I think a really important message that I like to put out there, the way any company scales is when the people scale. And your leaders, your employees, the people side of all of this is what I would consider the most important investment that you need to make. And frequently, and maybe people don't like to talk about it as much, but people do talk about it. I'm not saying I'm the first person here. We forget to invest as leaders and founders in yourself. We forget to, or we quickly feel this Russian ego as you start to scale. But it's really, really important to invest in yourself because founders have a multiplier effect. They're culture leaders. So the more that you invest in yourself, the more you understand who you are as a leader and as a person, the more centered you are, the faster your business will grow, because you will then be an example for all of your leaders of this type of leadership that we want at Paper or whatever company. And then they become these cultural leaders. And as companies scale, and everyone knows, the culture, which is so ingrained in the founders, starts to dissipate because your tentacles can't reach out that far into the org. So it's really important for you to understand culture is it's there. You don't choose what your culture is. It is what it is. But what's really important is for you to define that culture for everybody to understand. And the culture is from the founders. And again, the more you understand yourself as a leader, the clearer that culture becomes to everybody. So really, my message is don't be shy to invest in yourself. Take the time you need to learn about yourself and who you are as leader. It's fundamental. It's where all the breakthroughs happen. And give your team and your leaders the same space to do that as well.
You, like every other startup founder, is full of grit, the good kind of grit, good grit. Where does yours come from? Where do you think it came from?
Wow, that's an incredible question that I've never been asked before. I love this. I love this question. Where does it come from? I can tell you that I know that I'm very competitive. There's no doubt. But I can't tell you exactly why I'm so competitive. I don't feel like I have a chip on my shoulder. So the grit doesn't come from there. I don't feel like I need to prove anything to anybody. I think for me, what just really matters is, especially with Paper, it was, this might be like a cheesy answer, but it's very sincere. I really cared about the impact we were having on students, but I felt like I was fighting for them. That grit came from me not wanting to back down and fight for those students. If I look back at my own education and when I was a student, I did okay. I didn't struggle, but I wasn't, like a A+ student. But I always felt supported. I felt supported by my parents, by my teachers. And I felt that because I felt that support, my parents didn't sit down with me and do my homework. I had to figure it out for myself. But just on the fact that I know that I was supported, I think that it really benefited me during school. And I think when I started Paper, I saw like if I can give that back to students, that even if that support came from the form of a tutor or a coach or a mentor, then I felt I just owed it. I owed it to other people because I was so lucky to have that. So that's for me where the grit came from, especially with regards to Paper. Why I'm competitive when I'm playing my amateur soccer game on one Friday night, I can't tell you. I would have to dig into that one, but I'm competitive across the board. But I know the grit with specific with paper came from this idea that I just wanted to give back this feeling of support that I had.
I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out of deep in your background as well. When you say, I don't know why I'm competitive, that probably is an indication that it's in there very deep. How big is paper now? How many employees is it?
So we're obviously in our tutors are still our employees and have always been employees of the company. So we're probably around 1,000 employees or something like that. It's coming out of the pandemic, like a lot of technology companies, there was a bit of a market reset. So we unfortunately did go through a couple of layoffs, and those are never fun, specifically for the people that are impacted. But I didn't talk much about what specifically we do. We offer tutoring. For the majority of Taper's existence, we provided what we call on-demand tutoring, which was just, through chat. The student comes online, they're stuck with their math homework, they pop it in the chat, they go back and forth. But what we recognized was over the last, throughout the pandemic, it still didn't help serve the students that needed it most, because they were just discouraged. They didn't even care to go onto paper. Like, why am I going to help? Who cares? Nobody cares about me. So we launched a new product called Growth. And I'm not here to push the new product, I feel like, but it's just as important to the story of where we are today, which is this, it's a high impact tutoring where students can get one-on-one support from the same tutor through video multiple times a week. And we have a pre-assessment, a post-assessment. We can see their growth. And I just feel we're really going, in my opinion, even further into the mission of supporting the students that need it most. So it's something that I've been really excited about. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what the company does over the next few years as we launch into this new secondary product, or not secondary, the second big product, I should say, for the company.
A lot of your people are I'm assuming, like, distributed far and wide. So the core group, do you have them working remotely, or do you have an office, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we grew up during the pandemic. So what did that mean? We were 30 employees in March 2020, primarily based in Montreal. And then we had a satellite office in Los Angeles because we had, again, a lot of customers in Southern California. And then once it started to grow very quickly, we just decided we're going to be a distributed remote company that employs people in the US or Canada. And that's sort of what we are. So we're a remote company. I say we are because paper is so close to my heart, but I do want to just clarify that I've over the last 6 months, I've also taken a little bit of a step back with the company. And we do have a fantastic new CEO in role over the last few months. And so I feel a bit, I don't want to use the word uncomfortable, but it's we, meaning my company and the company that I founded, but it's no longer just mine. It's like my kid is old enough now that they moved out and they take care of themselves. So, yeah, it doesn't.
Have you kept a board seat? Are you on the board?
Yeah, on the board seat. I'm still very involved, advisor as well, and help them out. It's like the idea of my kids no longer at home, like I said, and they need help moving, and they'll call me. I'm like, yeah, I'm there. When do you need me? So it's been a nice transition for me, and I thought it was a good opportunity to get fresh eyes in over the last few months. So I feel a little bit irresponsible saying we, although it is still we and us and me, but it's a lot of other people involved. So I just want to be sure that I'm giving other people their credit.
Listen, thank you very much for this enlightening exposition on your company and your journey, and also telling us a little bit about your grit. Appreciate all of it.
Appreciate it very much, and thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
And here's your Founder's Toolkit from today's conversation with Roberto. Chase the problem, not the solution. Roberto spent 4 years deeply understanding the education access problem before finding product market fit. Focus on truly understanding your customers' pain points before locking in your solution. Know when to slow down during scaling. In high growth environments, identify the 3 to 4 decisions that will fundamentally change your business trajectory and give yourself time to make them thoughtfully, even when everything else feels urgent. Invest in yourself to multiply your impact. As a founder, your personal growth has a multiplier effect on your entire organization. Take time to understand your leadership style and who you are. It directly shapes your company's culture and success. Reframe budget conversations. Instead of asking if customers have money, show how your solution makes their existing budget work harder. Roberto succeeded by demonstrating how paper could deliver infinite value compared to traditional tutoring alternatives. Remember, true grit comes from having a mission that matters to you personally. Find what fuels your competitive drive and let it power you through the inevitable challenges of building something extraordinary. The show notes contain useful resources and links. Please follow and rate us at podchaser.com/designing successful startups. Also, please share and like us on your social media channels. This is Jothy Rosenberg saying, TTFN, ta-ta for now.